Welcome to This is Oregon, a podcast where we take you inside research happening at the University of Oregon and show you how it applies to your daily life. I'm Layla Okahata, your host for this episode. Joining me today is Melaney Grenz from the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, housed at the U of O's Department of Psychology. CBIRT helps students who've had traumatic brain injuries get the support they need at school and in daily life. As part of that mission, Melaney leads outreach and training, working directly with school personnel to ease the transition for students returning to the classroom after a concussion. Melaney, thank you so much for joining me today. Please introduce yourself and your role at CBIRT.
Well, thanks for having me, Layla. Well, I graduated from the U of O here on this beautiful campus some years ago with a master's degree in communication disorders. And I was employed as a speech pathologist in Oregon Public School for almost 3 decades. I failed at retirement and was asked to come back at the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training and be their project manager. I was on the Oregon Traumatic Brain Injury team for many of those 30 years. So as project manager, I direct all of the Oregon school traumatic brain injury teams, which includes 255 team members. Really proud of that. And I provide support to those teams. And I also do webinars and seminars and a podcast entitled Lived Experience with TBI. I also do live presentations in both Oregon and Texas, and I'm the Texas school liaison in this role as well.
For our listeners who may not be familiar with CBIRT, what's the work and research that's done there?
Oh, we are always doing research. Most of my work is with pediatrics, so anyone 3 years of age to 21 years of age. That's where I spend a lot of my time. We also do loads of research and other work with veterans and first responders. We do work in the juvenile justice centers and the Administrative for Community Living, and that's an agency that helps strengthen and support people with brain injuries across the entire lifespan. So we've also collaborated with folks in many states like Alaska, Arkansas, Washington, Texas, and Ohio.
Oh, so this, even though it's housed at the U of O, this sounds pretty national.
Yeah,
right?
We are international as well. We spend a lot of time working with some friends in the UK and Australia, and we have a contact right now in New Zealand that we're working with. So,
and you mentioned brain injuries, and we've all have heard brain injuries or concussions, but what exactly are they, and how common are they in children and adults?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question. So the definition of a TBI, or traumatic brain injury, is an acquired injury to the brain and is caused by an external force. And, you know, we have brain injuries that are mild, moderate, and severe, certainly. But there are 2,685 deaths per year nationwide secondary to brain injury, so that we know they're out there. 62,000 hospitalizations and 435,000 emergency department visits, accounting over 90% of ED visits, emergency department visits in students aged 0 to 14. So, and then our littles, as I call them, the 0 to 4 years of age students, children, have the highest risk of a brain injury. And then our high school students as well, and then our geriatrics, too secondary to fall. So, yeah.
Oh, how come those specific, 3 populations, why are they at the highest of risk?
You know, good question, because our littles, they falling off the bed, falling out of a grocery cart, falling down the stairs. Same with our geriatrics. Their motor skills are declining, so they're prone to more falls. And then our high schoolers, well, gosh, we know the risk-taking and sports. And we know the boys are 2 to 1 more likely to sustain a brain injury.
But the tricky thing I heard, Melaney, about traumatic brain injuries is that you can't exactly see one, right? It's unlike a broken bone or a skin wound. I've heard TBIs are often referred as the silent or the invisible injury. Can you weigh in on what that means exactly?
Oh, yeah. And I hear this all of the time. And our job at CBIRT and our job in the community at large really is to make that invisible disability visible. So when a person returns to school or work after a brain injury, they probably will look mostly the same. However, there's multiple challenges that these folks will have, like, for instance, cognitive issues with memory and learning and attention and that organizational skills, or there can be some emotional challenges, depression, anxiety, blunt emotions. I see that a lot. Your behavior, the anger, and the social skills that are impaired or challenged, impulsivity. And then the big one, too, is the physical challenges. Your balance is off after a brain injury. Your coordination, you have more headaches and pain and vision and fatigue, and these symptoms and challenges can change during the entire recovery process. So it's we just need to pivot.
Gotcha. So even though the symptoms of a TBI might be invisible to others on the outside, for the person experiencing it, I'm sure it's not very invisible. It's very felt, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'll just tell you, I sustained a couple of concussions. I played soccer. And my second concussion was like, wow. So people say, how does it feel? Okay, you've had a concussion, okay? You feel way different. It's scary. It's surreal. And each brain injury is different. And they're like a snowflake. If you've seen one snowflake, you've seen one snowflake. Same with the TBI. They're all vastly different. So after my second concussion, I distinctly remember I had balance issues, okay? Intense headaches that would come and go for no apparent reason. I had zero tolerance for loud noises and those awful fluorescent lights, kind of like in this building right now. And I remember being in the shower. You have to shower after soccer game, okay? And I fell in the shower a couple of times because my balance was off, my vestibular issues, visions was off, water and soap going in your eyes. And I fell, and it was all very scary. And I remember being so car sick. I hated getting in a car for that first 4 weeks after my second concussion because I knew I was going to get sick. And everybody can tell you a different version. But what I say, if you're a caregiver or you're working with that person, just give them a lot of grace. They're not doing this on purpose.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I guess what I love to ask is, what are some of the challenges you faced in like an academic setting while you were recovering from the concussion, and how might those relate to some of the common short and long-term challenges that students face?
If you think about a brain injury, it's not like another disability. It was unexpected. There's little the person could have done to prevent it usually. They were unprepared. So our high school students, I'm going to start with those because those are the kids that I work with just the most. They've sustained this mild TBI, otherwise known as a concussion, and they struggle to remember assignments, how to start and finish a multi-step task, how to study, and possibly prior to the injury, classes were really easy, and now it's hard work, and they study more, and they still can't get the answers correct. They don't have the stamina to go through a whole school day, and students start to ask themselves things like, wow, who am I now, right? And this can cause a great deal of anxiety and depression and certainly some acting out behaviors. And, unfortunately, what I want our listeners to know is we need to get on this right away and give them help, because this could morph into some long-term effects like PTSD, major depressive disorder, substance abuse, and even suicidal ideation.
We often hear of TBIs and concussions in a contact sport setting, and I know you mentioned also that you got it during soccer, but TBIs can happen in any activity or any sport, right?
Yeah. Falls are a number one cause of a brain injury, okay? And then motor vehicle collisions the second, and then sports-related injuries. But, my mother-in-law sustained a concussion falling off a curb. Just little things, just random things. But the risk of brain injury is 4 to 6 times greater after one and 8 times greater after two. So if you think of some of our athletes that have said that they've sustained greater than 20 concussions in their lifetime, that's scary stuff, right? They're going to see some challenges. But with our students that sustain the concussion, most of these symptoms abate in 4 to 6 weeks. But 15% of these students those symptoms do not abate. And that's where we need to pay attention and get them get into the schools and come into the schools and help them transition back.
And even though symptoms may abate in 4 to 6 weeks, in an academic year, 4 to 6 weeks is actually a pretty long time, right? That's maybe a third or fourth of a school semester, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on the students who catch up, but then they're having these challenges and these symptoms that prevent them from catching up as well, right?
Right. And recovery is so variable depending on the injury. We can't say, in this much time you're going to be okay. No one can do that, right? We wish we could, but we do know that social support of the family is the best predictor of function and quality of life after a brain injury. And I've said it so often that a brain injury adversely affects the entire family unit. And it's so imperative to wrap around all family members and get them the help they need.
Kind of to add on to that, what are some of the most common misconceptions of TBIs or misconceptions of people with TBIs?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many out there, aren't there? It's just, and I've heard so many, I just think to myself, oh dear, this is a teaching moment. The brains bounce back. You know what? They don't. You're just a child. Your brain is, plastic. You'll bounce back. You'll be fine. Or Or the big one that I hear, that student or child didn't lose consciousness. They don't have a concussion. No. In both of my concussions, I did not lose consciousness. And in 90% of cases with a concussion, you don't lose consciousness. So, or this is the big one. You look the same as before the injury, or how can you have another concussion? You barely bumped your head. And it goes back to that prevalence of after one, you're 4 to 6 times greater to sustain another one. This one I hear a lot in the schools. That student just lacks motivation. They're lazy. You used to be able to do this. Come on. So just this all, they're not doing this on purpose. Let's wrap around these kids and give them a lot of grace.
So what I've been hearing in our conversation so far is that recovery of a TBI doesn't just stop after the student or the person leaves the hospital. And one of the focuses of the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, or CBIRT, is helping students transition from the hospital back to school. So can you walk us through what the return to school process looks like?
Oh, and thanks. And we are so proud of this at CBIRT because we knew there was a need, right? So we've worked tirelessly to build a statewide network of school brain injury management teams. So we split up the state of Oregon to 9 geographical areas, and we're very proud to say that we have 255 dedicated team members. All of them are volunteers. Bless them. So what happens is we learn that a student has been being discharged from a hospital, okay? The local team, let's say it's in Baker City or Klamath Falls, they will spring into action. There'll be a school team lead that quickly connects with the hospital, secure signed informational releases between parents and hospitals, schools, clinics. Anybody that needs to contact, we've got to have those signed, obviously. And we also include the parents in that entire process from start to finish. And what we do is then we meet as a school team, identify what records we have, what we need, where the student was when they discharged from the hospital, potential goals, and then we need to decide whether additional evaluations are needed. We don't want to duplicate testing from the hospital. Some of that testing can be quite rigorous. And then we determine the best timing for the student's return. First day back. Then we create a tailored plan for services starting from day one, knowing full well that we are going to need to pivot and change, and the brain injury is going to let us know what needs to happen next. And so we just together as a team provide that best timing for a student's return. And I can't state enough how we need these brain injury management teams in every region and in every school district, and it just ensures seamless transition and it protects valuable recovery time. You don't want to be waiting 14 days to find a report, okay? And you don't want to prematurely send a student back when they're clearly not ready for an entire day as well. So we want to give our students the best possible start back, and we don't want them to see failure.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's ultimately the school system that serves as that long-term provider in ensuring these kids' quality of life improves, right?
Oh, yeah. Recovery after a brain injury isn't a one-size-fits-all. And then most of our students that sustain a concussion, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks, the symptoms abate. But we want to wrap around them and give them an immediate temporary accommodations plan for that 4 to 6 week period. Because we know it can happen if you do nothing for 6 weeks. You flunk out of class, you drop out. And then, like I mentioned, about 15% of our students, those symptoms will linger well beyond that 4 to 6 weeks. So these students might need a more robust safety net, like a 504 plan or individualized education plan. And again, that's where your brain injury management team comes in and determines what needs to happen next. So the journey can feel long and overwhelming, but our teams walk beside each student every step of the way right through graduation.
What are some of the kinds of accommodations or supports that you've seen that help students the most in school and in the classroom?
Brain injuries are invisible and they have that ripple effect. So when our kids come back to school, there can just be a maze of new and unexpected challenges, things that might trigger them one day, won't the next, like lights or sounds or in the hallways, what's going on. It can be frustrating to families and educators, but, accommodations, gosh, the big one is test in a quiet room, lecture notes from the professor or the teacher prior to, decreasing screen time et al. So we have a long list of accommodations on our website that schools can and parents can take a peek at and take those back to their teams and say, let's try this.
And what are some of the biggest challenges students and or educators face in the transition of returning back to school?
I think every parent worries what's going to happen with my child. Every student, I know I did with my concussion, what's going to happen next? Can I play my sport again? Am I always going to have headaches? Just so much. Am I going to graduate on time? Can I play my beloved sport? Can I go to college? Will I be successful? So, while teachers know the student before the injury, they may struggle to understand the sudden changes, right? And that's why our awareness matters. And we want to recognize the hidden hurdles of the brain injury and replace that frustration with support and help students navigate not just recovery, but a hopeful future, too.
You mentioned earlier that there was 255 staff across the state that are part of this program. Can you tell me about the schools that have adopted this return to school program, and what have you noticed in schools that really make a difference?
Well, it's a law now. So it's called House Bill 3007. We passed that in May, and that is that students returning back to school after sustaining concussion must have an accommodations plan. So our schools are really stepping up and doing this, and certainly asking for help because it's the beginning of the school year, just a few weeks ago. I'm getting lots of phone calls and emails like, what do we do? Help. But, and again, that's the beauty of having those teams in place to lead our staff through that process.
That's awesome that there is a return to school law. And why has it taken it until now to have something like that?
I think just awareness. Okay, just awareness. We did pass another House Bill 4140. We worked on it in 2020, but gee whiz, something else was happening in 2020, right? We finally got that passed in 2021. But the law stated that school districts may implement an immediate temporary accommodations plan. So we knew that some of our students may possibly have been falling through the cracks, and now it is a must. It is a shall. And so we're really quite proud of that, so our students aren't going to fall through the cracks.
Do other states have a similar law?
Thanks for asking. All 50 states have a return to play law, but only 14 states have a return to school law, with Oregon being one of them. Texas recently passed theirs. And so we just continue to help other states. It's like, you must have this in place. Our students are counting on us.
For schools interested in adopting the return to school program, what would you say, how can they get started then? Or what are some of the common barriers that happen when trying to start that kind of process or model?
Good question. I think there's continues to be that lack of awareness even after all these years and all of our research. And I think there's fear dealing with a brain injury in school. It's not like a speech impediment, right? It's like, whoa, it's a brain injury. What do I do? Where do I start? So I always say, reach out to us straight away. We're here to help all over the state. I field many, many, many emails per week and take phone calls. I get on Zoom calls. I share screens with school districts and say, let's try this. So we're here to help. But just that fear, we've never done it before, and now we have to. But that's the first step. We also have many webinars that are recorded that you can tap into and just learn exactly how to get involved and get this process going.
I read that the Oregon Return to School model has been in operation actually since 1994.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask then, over the past 30 years, have you seen the broader culture or perceptions around TBIs changing and catching up to what the research is showing?
Oh, yeah. And I think just awareness of brain injury has grown dramatically. I mean, we've got these high-profile injuries in professional and college sports, and often they're captured and replayed in the media and YouTube over and over and over. And, we've just seen that suddenly and severely a brain injury truly can happen. And some of these highly publicized and shocking injuries have driven home the truth that, this doesn't happen to other people. It truly can happen to me. And so, it's difficult to witness. This helps shift that brain injury from the hidden concern to public conversations. And awareness truly is that first step toward prevention, the early recognition, and better care. And that's when our research comes into, because we want to continue to make evidence-based decisions.
Yes. So, can you tell me more about those evidence-based decisions and the research at CBIRT as well?
Oh, we're doing loads of research, my goodness. About 30 years ago, CBIRT took a bold step, and we reached out to Oregon Department of Ed with a groundbreaking research study about returning to school. So we got a CDC grant and developed that and got really busy on evidence-based practices for students that help guide support kids in school and brain injuries and systems of support. We've also done some research with the juvenile justice centers, with veterans, with first responders. So we are not going to stop our research. It guides our next steps.
What are some of those evidence-based practices or tools you wish every educator, health professional, or parent knew about supporting someone with TBIs?
Oh, just that awareness of brain injury, ongoing education for teachers and coaches and school staff, not just once a year, but just just really get into the buildings and talk about what has changed, what could happen. I can't say enough about community outreach and public campaigns and that consistent training and continued coordinated awareness efforts so we can make sure that every student is recognized quickly and receives the right support. From day one, we don't want to see failure.
I'd love to transition our conversation towards looking ahead for CBIRT. And so what's next? What's upcoming?
We've got a lot going on. We continue to support our adults at this point as well, so including spouses and the entire family unit, juvenile justice programs, helping educators adapt, giving them guidance and new resources. There's loads of resources out there, and we want to continue to give them relevant and applicable resources. This year at CBIRT, we're placing a strong emphasis on preschool students and brain injury. That we know that early childhood is that critical period for brain development. Timely identification and support can really, truly make a profound difference. We're always seeking new grants and funding, which is essential to sustain our programs. And
Melaney, I'd love to ask about your latest project at CBIRT that you mentioned at the very beginning of this episode. You launched your own podcast. So how did you get involved with creating a podcast series, and what has that experience been like?
Oh, thanks for asking. Not a week goes by that I don't get inquiries from frantic family members or school personnel. And I say that sustaining a brain injury is like going on a journey that no one wants to go on, right? People are desperate for answers and help and resources. So our CBIRT social media expert, Rebecca Simon, said to me one day, you should really start a podcast series. And I thought about it for a day or two because this is out of my comfort zone, okay?
It doesn't sound like it.
Oh, well, it was. And I said, you're right. Let's do this. So our podcast series entitled Lived Experiences with TBI. And every episode takes you on a journey, and we begin with exploring the impact and this bad thing happened to us. And then we end on offering hope and a path with resources. And I always tell people, look, you might not want to tell your story, but your story needs to be heard because someone out there is counting on your experience to find hope and the answers they need. And we've had a very diverse group of guests, like a Super Bowl champion, injured police officer, injured vet, and a student who spiraled into addiction after a brain injury. And you can find our podcast series, Lived Experiences with TBI, on Podbean, Spotify, and Amazon.
Sounds like a diverse array of guests.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For listeners who may have a friend or a family member recovering from a brain injury, what's one practical piece of advice or encouragement you shared?
Oh, don't suffer in silence. Okay, reach out to CBIRT and other state and national agencies. We can help you find those resources that you desperately need, and you're not alone. There is always hope for the future.
Where can people learn more about CBIRT's research, training, and resources?
Oh, thank you. CBIRT.org, CBIRT.org. or returntoschool.org. And please tune in to our webinars, podcasts, and seminars.
Thanks again, Melaney, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Always great to be with you.
If you're interested in learning more about what we discussed in this episode, check out the links in the episode description. This is Oregon is produced by the Division of University Communications. For more of the latest University of Oregon research and news, visit news.uoregon.edu or find us on your favorite social media platform using the handle @uoregon. Thanks for listening, and go Ducks!